All right, so again, you guys got to kind of lead me on what kind of problems you need help with, because there's a lot of different things we could be doing. So just let me know if there's a specific problem, or even if there's just a generic type of problem that you want to work on, I can find examples that we can do. So if you need help writing equations, graphing, if there's a specific formula that you're struggling with, things like that, I can help you with. Oh yeah, we can definitely do that one. So the when the slope is undefined or when there's a zero slope, those are what I call special cases. I do have a quiz. I have the quiz that I gave, and I have Miss Weiss gave the same quiz, I think. So I have access to that quiz. Okay, so when you have an undefined slope or when you have a zero slope, there's those are the special cases, and they're special cases because you're gonna go straight from like the question to writing an answer. And so if it wants an undefined slope that goes through the point 2, 1, that's this dot right here. And then an undefined slope would be a vertical line. So going straight up and down, which is incredibly difficult for me to draw. We're going to pretend like that line is straight, and we're going to pretend like it's going through that dot. Yeah, we can for sure do that one next. Okay, so this is my vertical line. This has an undefined slope because it's a vertical line. And you'll notice that it only goes through the x-axis. And so if a line only goes through the x-axis, then the equation for it will be x equals something. And you get the something from the ordered pair. So this ordered pair was 2, 1, and the x coordinate would be the number 2, and so you would just write x equals 2, and then that would be your final answer. So the ones with undefined slope or zero slope, they don't require very much work. I personally like to draw the picture for those types of problems. I would not do it like using math, like using arithmetic. I would definitely do it by drawing a picture and then taking a look at the picture. Just really quickly, since we did this one, let's just take a look at the other special case. So the other special case would be a slope of 0. And so if something has a slope of 0, that would be a horizontal line like this. Much easier to draw. And you'll notice that the blue line is only going through the y-axis. It doesn't touch the x-axis at all. And so the equation of the blue line would be y equals, and the number would just be the y coordinate from the ordered pair, which would be the number 1. So y equals 1. Okay, so those are the two special cases. Undefined slope is x equals, and then zero slope is y equals. And then just make sure to read the questions very carefully. So like the question that was typed is write an equation in standard form. And so it's important that we put an equation with like an equal sign in it for our final answer. Sometimes though, they might just ask us to find the slope, and then they would just want to know if it was undefined or 0. So just really read the directions carefully. All right. So we had a question about a word problem. So I'm going to go ahead and run through a word problem with you guys. And I'm going to see if I can type it in here so everybody can see it, just in case. This was the word problem that I had on my quiz with my students, but if you're not my student, that's okay. I'm going to type it on here so you can see what it was. So it says, a salesperson for Lululemon earns $9 per hour plus a one-time $35 bonus. To help if I spelled that right. For meeting the sales quota. Let Y represent money earned and X represent hours worked. All right, so this, I hope you can see it now. This was the word problem that was on the quiz that I gave my students. And then there were some follow-up questions afterwards. So two of the follow-up questions were, one of them was find your y-intercept, and then another one was find your slope. So there are two numbers in this problem, and one of them is going to be the slope and one of them is going to be the y-intercept. The first number that I see is $9 per hour, and then the second number is the $35 bonus. So I want you to notice that I circled the per hour after the $9. The number that is immediately followed by the word per, that's going to be your slope. So my slope for this problem is $9 per 1 hour. And that's really important too, because that means that my y is representing money, which we already knew because it's said in the problem, but it matches, right? The y is representing money, and then the x is representing hours, and that also matches the problem, so that's really important. So my slope for this problem is $9 per 1 hour. And you are also supposed to write me a sentence about the slope. And so the sentence would be like, the slope means that for every 1 hour I work, I earn $9, something like that. Okay, so again, you're looking for the word per. The other number, the one that is not the slope, that one has to be the y-intercept. So my y-intercept is going to be 0,35. I know a lot of your teachers require you to write your intercepts as ordered pairs, so if that's true, it's true for me. So if you are one of the 3 students here who are my students, you have to write your intercept as an ordered pair, 0, a number for the y-intercept. And then I also asked for you guys to write down a sentence about that, and the $35 represents the $35 you're going to get no matter what. Like, they're just going to give you $35. It's not per hour, it's just one time they're going to hand you $35. So that's the y-intercept. And then after you know what your y-intercept and your slope are, then you can write me an equation in slope-intercept form. And so that's just y equals my slope, which is 9x, and then plus 35. And so that's the equation that I would want to graph. For the graph, and we're just going to kind of wing it because I don't have graph paper right now on the screen. For the graph, first of all, there's going to be lines where you're supposed to label the graph with words. So make sure you're writing down words. And I mean, they even told you, in this one, they told you what the words meant. Y was money, and X was hours. Obviously, you will do a better job of writing this than me on a computer screen. But you can also get what your letters represent from your slope. Right, so again, whatever unit is on top of the slope, that's what your y is representing, and whatever unit is on the bottom of your slope, that's what the x is representing. So you can also get your units from there. Next, we need to label with numbers, and we're not necessarily going to count by ones because some of these numbers are kind of ginormous. So we want to count by whatever makes sense for the problem. Now, for counting along my x's, I like to look at the bottom of my slope, and the bottom of my slope is 1. And so for counting along my x's, it makes sense to count by ones. Because the bottom of the slope is my run, which is how far I want to go on my x-axis, so I probably do want to just go 1 on my x-axis. For my y's, I need to look, first of all, where I need to start. I need to start at the number 35, which is a pretty big number. And then I also want to look at the rise of my slope, which is the number 9. So not only do I have to start at 35, I also have to go up 9 numbers every time I do my slope. And so when I was making my answer key, I chose to count by tens. Now that's not the only thing you can count by, that's just what I decided to count by. So on my y-axis, I'm going to count by 10. So 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80. Now, when you're graphing your line, again, it's really important that you start on your y-intercept, which is 35. And according to my graph, that's going to be halfway between the 30 and the 40. And then when you're graphing these, also, you don't want to go into the negatives at all. So make sure you're starting on the y-axis and then you're going up and you're not accidentally going past the y-axis. And then my slope is 9 over 1. So I started at 35. I need to rise 9. So that puts me at 44. And I'm going to just go over 1, which I conveniently counted by 1s on the x-axis. So I need to go up to where I think the 44 is, and then over 1. And then from the 44, I need to go up 9 more, which puts me at 53. Okay, and then over 1 more. So now I'm at the 2. I'm going to go up 9 again, which puts me at 62. And over 1. My line's not going to be straight because I don't have graph paper. But I'm doing the best I can. From the 62, I'm going to go up 9 more, which puts me at 71. We're getting pretty darn close now. And then I can fit 1 more. If I go up 9 again, that puts me at 80, which is about here. And so then my line looks like this. And we're going to pretend again that my line is nice and straight. I'm adding 9 because for my slope, which is right here, I'm supposed to rise 9 and run 1. And so I started at the number 35, and I'm supposed to count up 9 numbers, not 9 boxes. Because if I count up 9 boxes and I'm counting by 10s, that's going to have me go up 90 numbers. I just want to go up 9. So from the 35, if I rise 9 numbers, then that would put me at a 44. And as far as like the run is 1. Well, I made sure to count by 1s on the bottom, so I didn't have to do anything really funky about counting over for my x's. So I just kept it at the 1. All right, cool. There was one more question about this, and then I'll start working my way through. I see that you guys have typed in about 3 or 4 other questions, so we'll definitely get to those. But there was one more follow-up question on this word problem, so I'm going to change the screen and we'll talk about that. And for the follow-up question, we just needed to know that the formula that we had written was y equals 9x plus 35. And so the last question that I had about the word problem said, how many hours do you need to work to earn $305? Let me type that in there so you can see kind of the logic behind this. So how many hours do you need to work to earn $305? Okay. It's also important for us to go back and think about what our variables were. So if we go back and think about our graph, we had written that along the x-axis that was hours, and along the y-axis that was money. That's also kind of important. So x is representing hours and y is representing money. And so when I read through this question, I see the number 305, and I notice that the units on it is dollars. And so since it's $305, that means, what is this? Do you simplify the slope into a whole number? Yes. So the slope, when you're writing it in an equation, you can write it as a whole number. When you're going to graph it, you do want to write it as a fraction so that you have a rise and a run. But when it's inside the equation, you can write it as a whole number. That would be fine. Do you mean like, will it tell you what the words are for the y and x axis? It might not. So again, one way that you can find that out is by looking at your slope. And so my slope was the $9 per hour, right? So $9 per hour. And slope is y's on top and x is on the bottom. So that tells me that y is money and that x is hours. So if you look at the units on your slope, that'll help you figure out what y and what x are. The y is the top unit and then the x is the bottom unit. Also, look, the y-intercept also had a unit of dollars. And so if the y-intercept has a unit of money, then that means that your y, what y is representing is money. And then x will represent whatever else we're measuring in that problem. All right, so that's how I knew that y was money. And the problem might not tell you what it is, and so you got to kind of just figure it out. I think on most of these problems it's money, but it might not always be. All right, so if $305 is money and money is y, that means that they're saying y equals 305. So I'm going to plug in a 305 here. So I have 305 equals 9x plus 35, and then I just need to solve for x. So I'm going to minus my 35 and divide by 9, and I get x equals 30. And if I look over here, my x had a unit of hours, so I would write 30 hours. And I think actually, because tomorrow's test will have a word problem like this, I think we gave you enough space on the test that you could write us out a full sentence. Like, you need to work 30 hours, right? So just make sure you're writing a sentence that makes sense. All right, so that was a word problem. Yes, you do. So, sorry, the question was, do you switch the number from positive to negative when adding into an equation for point slope? And yes, so if a number in an ordered pair is a positive number, when you plug it into point slope, it turns into a negative because point slope form has a subtraction symbol in the original problem. Cool, glad it helped. All right, so now let's go back. I answered the first question. We did a word problem. Okay, so the next question I'm seeing in our list is that we want to write something. Oh, white is not a good color to write in. We want to find something in slope-intercept form. And we were given the slope is -4 and the point is 2, -8. All right. And it looks like you have Miss Carter, so I think that the way that she taught you is to plug everything into point slope form. And then just kind of manipulate that until it turns into slope intercept. Slope intercept, by the way, is y equals mx plus b. So what we're going to do is we're going to start plugging into the red formula, and then we're going to move stuff around until it looks like the green formula. Okay, so when we're writing it, it's y minus, this is my m because that was the slope, and then this is my x1 and this is my y1. So y1 is -8, and what I do when I'm writing things down, I kind of I talk in my head when I'm writing it down, and so I will say in my head y minus -8. And when I say the negative sign from the -8, I don't write a negative symbol. I actually write a sign to make it a plus sign. So that was also another question that was asked, right? Is do we change the sign? So when you're taking something from an ordered pair and plugging it into point slope form, the sign does change. So that 8 was originally negative, now it's a positive. Equals my m, which was -4, and then we say x minus 2 because 2 was my x1. All right, so this is point slope form. You do need to know which equation is which formula, because you don't want to write the answer in the wrong format and then you got the answer wrong because you didn't know what format to write it in. So really make sure you know which one is which. This is point slope. This is slope intercept. Okay, so now I'm going to just move some stuff around until it looks like it's supposed to. So I'm going to distribute the -4. And then for slope-intercept form, I want the y to be all by itself. So I'm going to take this 8 and I'm going to subtract it to the other side. Now 8 minus 8 is 0, so this would be the best way to write your answer. I know I will allow my students to write the +0 if they need to, but this one is really better. You don't have to write a 0 if it's being added or subtracted. You can just leave it off of the problem. All right. Next question was problem 7 on the review worksheet. Okay, so problem 7 also wanted something in slope-intercept. And this time, though, we were given 2 ordered pairs. And so we need to do a little pre-work. If we're given 2 ordered pairs, we don't want to go straight to, or we can't really go straight anywhere, because the first thing we need to do is we actually need to find our slope. So we can label these, x1, y1, and then x2, y2, and we can find our slope. If you don't know the slope formula, it is m equals y2 minus y1, and then x2 minus x1. Okay, so I'm going to do 2 minus negative 1, which changes to plus 1. And then I will do negative 2 minus 4. Notice that that one did not change to adding because the negative number was in front of the subtraction sign. So we keep that one a subtraction sign. 2 plus 1 is 3. Negative 2 minus 4 is negative 6. Now, if your slope can simplify, you must simplify it. I can guarantee you that is true for every math teacher. They will always want you to simplify your fractions if possible. So I am going to simplify this. It turns into negative 1/2. If you want to keep the negative on the bottom with the 2, that's okay. I always like to write my negatives on top of my fractions. But 3 and 6 are both divisible by 3, right? So negative 1/2. Now, I know this is my student asking, so I'm going to show you how to do this one the way I taught my students. It might be different from what you learned in your class. So if you want me to do it the other way, we can do that as well. But what I taught my students was to go back and use the slope formula, and we're going to modify it a little bit. We're going to get rid of these 2's, and we're going to plug numbers into this modified slope formula, and we'll do a little cross multiplying. Okay, so my slope I just discovered is negative 1 over 2. And then I'm going to do y minus negative 1 for the top of the fraction, and then I'll do x minus 4 for the bottom of the fraction. And then from here, we're going to cross multiply. So yeah, let me do it this way first, and then I'll do it the other way for sure. I'm going to do the 2 times the y plus 1. And then I'll do the x, which is the negative 1 times x minus 4. I'm going to distribute. And distribute. Slope-intercept form is y equals mx plus b, so I need to get the letter y by itself. So next I will subtract 2. And then as a final step, I'm going to divide everything by 2. When you divide, you have to divide in 3 places. You're going to divide the y, you're going to divide the x, and you're going to divide the number. And then this would be my final answer. Now this is how I teach it. This is how Miss Weiss teaches it as well. I think everybody else uses point slope form, so I can definitely show you that. I can show you that for this problem next. Okay, so we can still use the same slope, negative 1/2. And we can use the same ordered pair, which was 4, negative 1. So if you're going to do it the way that the other teachers do, you start in point slope form, which is this. So I'm going to do y minus negative 1 equals negative 1/2 x minus 4. hold up. Yeah, okay. All right, and so then we're going to distribute the negative 1/2. So that makes negative 1/2 x. Negative times a negative becomes a positive, and then when you multiply 1/2 times 4, you can just think of like what is half of 4. You can do 4 divided by 2, and that'll turn into a 2. The integers on the left. You mean like if there's two ordered pairs? Yeah, you can. You do whatever you want. So you can make the first one x1 y1, or you can make the first one x2 y2. The whole point though is that within a point the numbers are x and y, and so within one ordered pair you can make them x1 y1, and within a second ordered pair you can make it x2 y2. The sign does not switch in slope-intercept form, only in point-slope form. So if you look at the formulas, the formula for point-slope form contains minus signs. And those minus signs is what makes the sign switch. But if you look at slope-intercept form, y equals mx plus b, slope-intercept, the original formula, it has a plus sign. And so the sign does not switch for slope-intercept because the original problem has a plus sign. If the original formula has a minus sign, that's the one where you have to switch it. We're one step away from the answer, guys. We just need to minus this 1. And then we have it. And that's the same answer I got on this other one, right? Negative 1/2 x plus 1. So it doesn't matter which method you use. Okay, cool. I think we're good on that one. All right, so next, Matt, we're going to do yours, which said, what is the equation of the line that, oh, Matt, do you have a preference on what format the answer gets written in? Because we could do slope, intercept, point slope, or standard. So I'm not really sure which one you were doing. Is Matt still here? Yes, he is. Point slope? Sure. So point slope is cool because it's actually like the easiest one. Point slope, you can just take the numbers and plug them straight into the point slope formula, which is this formula, and then you're done. So point slope, don't overthink it. Don't do too much. Just make sure that you are plugging in and then moving on to the next problem. Hold on one second. Sorry, guys. Okay. So the ordered pair gives me my x1 and my y1, and it is always in that order. It's x1, y1, because x comes first in the alphabet and y comes second. And then your slope is your m. So you can just plug the numbers straight into the spots, right? So the y1 goes here, the m goes here, and then the x1 goes all the way over here. And this is what they were asking about, like changing the signs. So in point slope form, because of the subtraction symbols, the signs will change. So it's going to be y minus 5. So even though it was a positive 5 up here, we wrote a negative 5 in the formula, equals my slope, which is negative 1 over 4. And then it's x minus negative 8. And that will change to a positive 8. So again, because of this minus sign, and this negative sign, that's like a double negative, and that will change to a positive. And then you're done. So don't accidentally do like any extra steps on point slope form. Just plug the numbers in and then walk away and do the next problem, because that's all you need to do. All right. That was Matt, Joe. Okay, Melanie, so we're on to your question next. Yep, point slope form, plug the numbers in, and then move on to the next problem. Like in reality, you don't even have to show any work on point slope forms. If we give you the point and the slope, you can just go straight to the answer line. You don't need to do anything else. The only scenario where you would need to show work for point slope form is if we gave you two ordered pairs, then you would need to find the slope before you could write your answer. All right, Melanie, so you have this equation, which is in slope-intercept form, and you have asked to change it into standard form. So standard form looks like this: ax plus by equals c. Hold on one more minute, guys. Sorry, my children are not getting along right now. All right, standard form. So standard form has the letter x is at the very beginning of the problem, and that's followed by the letter y, and then we have the equal sign, and then we have like a number that doesn't have any letters next to it. So right now, the thing that's the worst is, we have our letter x, and it's on the wrong side of the equal sign. So I am going to take the x, and I'm going to move it over to the left side of the equal sign, and it's a negative 1/3 x, so I'm going to add it to the other side. And then because I want the x first, I am going to write that positive 1/3 x at the beginning of the problem. And then I'm going to follow that up with the y. The y did not have a symbol in front of it, so it was also a positive number. And then these canceled. And I'm left with my 5 over here. And so now everything is in the right spot. I've got my x is first, my y is second, I've got my equal sign, and then I have my number on the other side of the equal sign. So that's all fantastic. But there are two rules for standard form that we need to, so once everything's in the right spot, there's a couple rules about making it look pretty. So rule number 1, no fractions or decimals anywhere in the problem. And unfortunately, we're breaking that rule right now because there's a 1/3 in the problem. To get rid of a fraction, what you do is you multiply by whatever number is on the bottom, the denominator. So I'm going to multiply by 3. And when you multiply or when you divide, you do need to do it in 3 different places. You have to do it with the x, you're going to need to multiply the y, and you're going to need to multiply the number as well. So just multiply everything by 3. When you multiply the fraction, you're not actually going to multiply because what will happen is the 3's are just going to cancel, leaving you with the 1 that was on top of the fraction. And actually that 1 doesn't even need to be written down if you don't want to. I do need to actually multiply my y, so it's going to be plus 3y. And I do need to multiply the 5 and the 3, so that'll equal 15 now. The second rule for standard form is that the first number has to be a positive number. And we are not breaking that rule. The first number is positive, and so I'm ready to say that this is my final answer. And again, the 1 does not need to be in front of the x. You could just write x plus 3y equals 15, and that would be okay. All right. So next, Ava, we are on yours. It says slope-intercept. And 2 ordered pairs, 9, 2 and negative 2, 6. All right, so we've done one with 2 ordered pairs earlier today, and we said that the first thing you have to do is you have to find the slope. So I'm going to go ahead and label these. Oh my goodness, I'm trying to label them correctly. X1, Y1, and then X2, Y2. And my slope formula, y on top, x on the bottom. All right, so I am going to do 6 minus 2 over negative 2 minus 9. So that gets me 4 over negative 11. And if you want to, you can put the negative sign on top. So you can do negative 4 over 11. If you like I like my negative signs on top. So if you like that, you can do it that way. Okay, and then Ava's Carter, yeah. Okay, so now we're going to plug this into point slope form. And we're going to do some math until it looks like slope intercept. Okay. So I'm going to do y minus 2 equals negative 4 over 11 x minus 9. All right. So I got to distribute my negative 4 over 11. And this gets a little bit tricky. So a negative times a negative is a positive. And then 4 over 11 times 9, you can make it a 9 over 1, and then you can just multiply straight across. So 4 times 9 is 36, and 11 times 1 is 11. Next, we want to get our letter y by itself, so we're going to add 2. All right, so I have 36 over 11 plus 2, and I'm going to make it a 2 over 1. And for multiplying fractions, which is the first thing we did, you don't need a common denominator. You can just multiply straight across. But when you're adding or subtracting fractions, you will need a common denominator. So I went ahead and made that 2 a 2 over 1, and I'm going to times this by 11 so that I get a common denominator. So this is actually 36 over 11 plus 22 over 11. Yeah. And then once you have a common denominator, you keep your denominator the same, and then you add your numerators. So 36 plus 22 is 58. So I get y equals negative 4 over 11x plus 58 over 11. You know what, hun, can I just show you the way that I taught you in class, because I did not teach you this method. And I can show you the other method, and you won't have to worry about all that. You won't have to worry about all this fraction stuff that I just did. Okay, so this is how Miss Carter, Miss Harvey, I'm not sure about Mr. Pixler because I asked and he did not answer which way he does it. But for sure, Carter and Harvey teach it this way, 100% for sure. But Weiss and myself, we do it a little different. So we had a slope of negative 4 over 11, and we had an ordered pair 9, 2. So if you're my student, remember we did the modified slope formula. So we're going to do negative 4 over 11 equals y minus 2 over x minus 9. And we're going to cross multiply. We'll start with the y's. So we'll do 11 times y minus 2. And then we will do the x's, which is negative 4 times x minus 9. And then we'll distribute. And we'll distribute. We will add 22. And we will finish off this problem by dividing in 3 different places by the number 11. And we get the same answer. If you do it with this method, you don't have to deal with all those fractions. You don't have to know how to multiply fractions. You don't have to know how to add fractions, subtract fractions. The fractions kind of disappear until the very, very last step. But you'll notice that we got the same numbers, right? We have a 36 and a 22. We have our 11, which ends up on the bottom of the fraction. So we still get the same answer using this method. And so just, use whatever method you're comfortable with. I know some of my students even use the other method, the point slope form, because that's what they remember, and that's fine. All right, so that was this one, integers, slope, point slope, numbers, cool. All right, next problem is slope intercept. And the slope is -4 and the ordered pair is 0, 0. And so I know you're in my class, so I'll do it the way that I taught you, which again is the modified slope formula. So we do our slope is -4. We do write it as a fraction so that we can do cross multiplying. And then this is x1, y1, so it's y minus 0 and x minus 0. And I'm just going to keep the minus zeros in there so that I have something, because I want to write something. So it's 1 y minus 0, and then -4 x minus 0. So this is just this, and then this, which actually does nothing at all. And you can write it like this if you want. Really, that 0 is not required, so you could also just write y equals -4x, and that's the better, more simplified way to write the answer. We talked about that earlier. When it's 0, it's y equals a number, and when it's undefined, it's x equals a number. You want to actually draw pictures for that. Let me see if I can find, that was like the very, very first thing that we talked about. There we go. So an undefined slope would be like the red line, and a red line, the vertical line, it goes through the x-axis, so you would just write x equals, and then you pick your number from the ordered pair. So I don't know if you can see right here, I had an ordered pair 2, 1, so the x number was 2, so I wrote x equals 2. And this is for undefined or no slope. And then the y, um, sorry, zero slope is like the blue line, and zero slope will always be a horizontal line, and that goes through the y-axis, so you would write y equals. And again, you can get the y number from the ordered pair. In my ordered pair, the y number was 1, so that's where I put this. You're welcome. Okay, let's see, we did that one. Matt, I think yours is next on the list. So you want an equation. Oh, Matt, you forgot to tell me what format again. So I see two ordered pairs, -6, -2, and then -3, 2. And I just need to know slope intercept, point slope, or standard. Oh yeah, we'll totally do that one next. Let me, yeah, because there's no other questions between yours and the one I'm doing right now. Oh, okay, well then you can pick. Which one do you want to see? Do you want to see point slope, standard, or slope intercept? We haven't really practiced any standard yet if you want to practice standard. Okay, yeah, let's practice standard because we've been really focusing on slope intercept. Okay, so again, though, before we can even think about what format we're going to do, we need to find our slope because we don't know it right now. So we're going to do 2 minus -2 over -3 minus negative 6. Okay, so that gives me 4 over 3, and that's my slope. Matt, did you tell me who your teacher is so that I know what method to use? Okay, so we're going to do point slope form. So as we have been doing, it's y minus y1 equals m x minus x1. So I'm going to do y minus negative 2 equals 4 over 3 x minus negative 6. And then I'm going to distribute. It's y plus 2 equals 4/3 x. And then 4 over 3 times 6. You can make this a 6 over 1, and you can either multiply straight through, which would be a 24 divided by 3, which simplifies to 8, or you can do cross-canceling. 6 divided by 3 is 2, and 4 times 2 is 8. Either way, that turns into an 8. Okay, standard form, if we forgot, is ax plus by equals c. All right, next I'm going to move my plus 2 that's with the y, and I'm going to move it over here with the 8. And then finally, to get everything in the right position, I'm going to subtract the 4/3 x to the other side. Now, I do want, again, my x to be first, my y to be second, and my number to be on the other side of the equal sign. So that subtracting 4/3 x, I have to write minus 4/3 x. And then the y, it did not have a symbol in front of it. That means it was a positive y. And then that equals this 6 that was over here. All right, now everything's in the right spot, so that's good. But again, we talked about earlier today, we have our 2 rules. No fractions anywhere in the entire problem. And the first number must be positive. Now, unfortunately, we are breaking both of those rules right now. We have a fraction, it's 4/3, and the first number is negative. So we need to take care of that. And so I am going to get rid of the fraction, I'm going to multiply everything by 3. And to get rid of the negative, I'm going to multiply everything by a negative 3 instead of a positive 3. And that should fix it. So on my x term, the 3's will cancel and the double negative will cancel, leaving me with just the 4 that was on top of the fraction. I do need to multiply the negative 3 times the y, and I need to multiply the 6 times the negative 3. And so this would be what the answer looks like in standard form. All right. We're going to take a short break from writing equations and we're going to do a graphing problem. So I'm going to switch to some graph paper. I'm going to delete all of this because we don't need to see that. Slope. Yes. X can be negative in slope intercept. That would be fine. The y cannot, though. The y cannot have a negative symbol with it in slope intercept form. Oops, that is not what I wanted to do. Okay. So the question was, we want to graph y minus 2 equals 2 x plus 3. And so this is point slope form. Y minus y1 equals m, x minus x1. And the easiest thing to find in point slope form would be the slope because it's just the number in front of the parentheses. So I'm going to go ahead and say my slope for this problem is 2 over 1. I like to write my slope as a fraction so that I remember that it is a rise and a run. Now the tricky thing is finding my point, my ordered pair. And so what you need to do is an ordered pair is in the order of x and y. And so you're going to look for your x first, which is right here. And then we've kind of been talking about this all night. When you do point slope form, the sign ends up changing. So if it says +3 in point slope form, you're actually going to write that as a -3 in your ordered pair. Same thing for your y coordinate. So here's my letter y. If it has a y -2, I'm actually going to write a +2 for my ordered pair. And so here's my point, and here's my slope. When you're graphing, you always want to graph your point first, your ordered pair. And the first number in the ordered pair is telling me to go to the left because it's a -3, and the second number is telling me to go up. So I'm going to start by going left 3 and up 2, and this is my starting point. From there, we count our slope. And our slope right here, it says to rise 2 boxes. So from my black dot, I'm going to count up 1, 2 boxes, and then run 1 box. So I'm going to count to the right 1 box. And so here's my next dot. So the black dot was my starting point, and then the red dot is from doing my slope. And then I always make my students draw at least 3 dots. Honestly, you can draw so many dots on this one because you can just keep doing your slope. Rise 2 boxes, run 1 box. Rise 2, run 1. Rise 2, run 1. You can even do the complete opposite of that, which would be a -2 over a -1. So instead of going up and right, I'm also allowed to go down to left 1, down to left 1, and again, you can draw as many dots for slope as you want to. And we're going to pretend like I'm doing this well, but I'm not going to. You connect, oh my goodness, that wasn't even close to the right direction. What is happening here? You connect all of your dots together with a nice somewhat, wow, that got really curvy at the end. Connect them together with a nice straight line. You can use your ID card to help you draw straight lines tomorrow. The graphs are not huge, all right? All right. You're welcome. Let me see how many more of these I can fit in the time we have. Oops, that's not what I wanted. Whiteboard. Okay. 18 on the review. Number 18 is a word problem. It says you have to get rid of the number attached to the y. You would divide in 3 different places. You would divide the y by that number, the x by that number, and the thing that is just a number by that number. Let's see. Write an equation in slope intercept form for the total rental cost C for a pontoon boat used, boat used for T hours if it costs $60. Oh man, oops, hold up. If it costs $60 per hour plus a $20 cleaning fee. Sorry. There we go. All right, so this one is like the word problem we did at the very, very beginning, the Lululemon salesperson thing. So you have two numbers. We have a $60 per hour, and we have a $20. And I circled the per hour part because the word per tells me that 60 is my slope. And that means that 20 has to be my y-intercept because those are your two options. In this particular problem, they did tell us the variables they want us to use. They want us to use C and T. Remember that $60 per 1 hour, that means that my y is the dollars and my x is hours. And so if T is hours, that's really saying use T instead of X. And if C is cost, that means use C instead of Y. So instead of doing Y equals MX plus B, I'm going to do C equals MT plus B. So it's C equals M is the 60, T plus B is the 20. And that would just be your answer. All right, next one, pretty straightforward. They want slope intercept, and then they gave you the slope and the intercept. They told you the slope is 1/4, and the y-intercept is -5, and that's really your letter B. So that one is just straight up plug it in. So I'm going to plug in a 1/4 for my M, and I'm going to plug in a -5 for my B. You can either write plus -5, or instead of doing plus negative, you can just write minus, and that would be okay. That would actually be the better way to write it. Number 21. Oh, another graphing problem. Okay. Nope, that's not what I wanted to do. Document this. Okay, let's clear out the one we just did. Actually, the one that you're asking for is very similar to this one that we just did. The numbers, no, the numbers are backwards. All right. So let's see. This is number 21 on the chapter 5 review, and it is y minus 3 equals -1/3 x plus 2. So again, this is point slope form, which is y minus y1 equals mx minus x1. And the easiest thing to find is your slope. My slope on this one is -1/3. Now I am going to write the negative on top with the 1. I'm not going to leave it in front of the fraction like it was typed on the paper. So when we type it, we usually do type it in front of the fraction, but it's in your best interest to write the negative on top, attached to the top number. And then we need our ordered pair. And again, this is where it gets a little bit tricky. So remember that x goes first, y goes second. And we talked about how you take the number that's attached to the x and you do the opposite sign. So I'm going to do -2 for my x number. Then I'm going to take the number attached to the y and I'm going to do the opposite sign. So I'm going to write a +3 for my y number. And that tells me where to start. I'm going to start by going left 2 and up 3. So that gets me right here. My slope is rise over run. So from my black dot, I'm going to rise -1 box, which would be going down 1. And then I'm going to run 3 boxes. So that would be going to the right 3. Down and right. The negative sign only applies to the top number. So that makes the top number go down. But since the bottom number is positive, it goes to the right. So down 1, right 3. If you want to give the negative to the bottom number, that will make the top number positive. That would mean rise up 1 and left 3, up and left. And notice when I connect these dots that my line is going in a downward motion. That's good. When your slope is negative, you want your line to go down. That was number 21 on the Chapter 5 review. Matt, I need the form again, hun. We can definitely graph that and we can write an equation, but I need to know what form you want the equation in. Slope, intercept, point, slope, or standard. Yeah, the negative sign can be on the top or the bottom. The one place I don't recommend is that you float it in front of the fraction because that can get really confusing. Okay, then you pick point slope's going to be the easiest. Standard's probably the hardest. Okay, cool. So if we're going to graph, the first number is an x and the second's a y. So for my first ordered pair, I'm going to go left 2 and down 7, which is all the way down here. And for my second ordered pair, I'm going to go right 5. And since it's a 0, I'm not going to go up or down. So that's here. And then we can, well, we're going to pretend like I connected the dots. One of the cool things about graphing is now I don't have to calculate my slope. I can count my slope if I want to. So instead of calculating slope, I could count my rise over run. When you're counting your rise over run, you want to make a right triangle with the line. Okay. And so I'm going to start down here at the bottom dot, and I'm going to count up first. And so when I count up, that's a positive, and I'm counting up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 boxes. So my rise is positive 7. And then I'm going to count my run, and I'm counting my run to the right, so that will also be a positive. And I'm starting right here because that's where I ended up, and I'm going to count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 boxes as well, positive 7. And then we do want to simplify that. That simplifies to the number 1, and that's my slope. If you're doing point slope form, you can use either of the points that you want. I'll actually show you both, and it doesn't matter which one you use. So if I use the top ordered pair, it will become y minus negative 7 equals 1 times x minus negative 2. Now technically we really shouldn't write this 1 here. We really should leave that out. I'm just going to write it there so I have something for my slope. On a test tomorrow, I would not take off points for something like having that 1 in front. But if this is a Delta math problem, the website might not want you to have the 1 in front. If you want to use your second ordered pair instead, that would be y minus 0 equals 1 times x minus 5. Again, this 0 and this 1 are extra. They are not required. You could just write y equals x minus 5, and that would be okay. And look, that's my y-intercept, because this is slope-intercept form. All right. I see one more question, so we'll do that one. We're 5 minutes past our time, so I'm going to cut it off at this question. And then if you joined us late, you can go back and rewatch the video. Once we are done, I will post it online. So if you were not here for the whole thing and you want to go back and see what we did at the beginning, you can do that. Or if you just want to watch it all again anyway because you need extra help, that's fine too. Our last problem we're going to do is a slope of 3, an ordered pair of 2, 5, and standard form. On standard form, please just make sure that you don't plug straight into standard form because that is like 100% wrong, and like we can't even give you partial credit for that. If you plug in 2x plus 5y equals 3, we can give you 0 points for that. We will take off all of the points possible. Right? This is not correct. And that is every student's first instinct of what they want to do, and it is 100% wrong. Please do not do that. You have to start in a different equation to get standard form. So I know my student asked for this, so I'm going to start doing it the way that I taught my students, but I will go back and do it the way that the other teachers taught their students. Okay, so this is my way, and then this is the other way. Okay, so we'll do it both ways, just so everybody can see what they learned. So my way is the modified slope formula. Modified slope formula again is y minus y1, x minus x1. We just get rid of the little 2's. So my slope is 3, and I'm going to write it as a fraction, 3 over 1, so that I can do my cross multiplying. And then it's y minus 5 and x minus 2. So I'm gonna cross multiply. And then the 3 times the x minus 2. So I get y minus 5 equals 3x minus 6. I'm going to move my constant to the other side, which PS, this is slope-intercept form. It's not what I want. So tomorrow, one of the most important things is going to be reading the directions and figuring out what format do we want the answer in. And maybe even like highlight or circle the directions. Maybe like off to the side, write down what the equation looks like so that you remember what your answer should look like. So that's really important. So I'm not at my answer yet. I need to move my x to the other side. And I am breaking a rule right now, the rule where the first number is supposed to be positive. So I'm going to multiply everything in the equation by -1 so that I can make that first number a positive. So now I will get positive 3x minus y equals positive 1. And then that is my final answer. The other method that you can use, and both methods, don't get me wrong, one method is not better than the other. It's just whatever you're familiar and comfortable with. So I have a personal preference of the modified slope formula. That doesn't mean that point slope form is bad. That just means that it's not my own personal preference. But that's a personal opinion. So point slope form is the other method we could use. And so we would start that. We would do y minus 5 equals 3 times x minus 2. And actually, guys, after we do the first step, which is distributing, we are at the same place where I was right here. Look, it's the same equation. So we can do the same thing, and we should get the same answer because there's nothing different at this point in time. The one thing you just got to be careful about is that you're multiplying all of the numbers. So you have to multiply the x and the y and the number over here. Same thing if you're going to do dividing or anything like that. Like it's all or nothing. So it's usually in 3 places that you have to do it. Yeah, because if you look at both of our formulas, whether you're doing the modified slope formula or you're doing point slope form, the actual formula itself has subtraction signs, and that's when you have to switch the sign. Are you about ready for bed, hon? Okay, go brush your teeth and I'll be in there in a minute. My class is almost done, okay? Okay, yeah. All right, guys, I hope that was really helpful. Again, I'm going to post this up online as soon as we are done, and I wish you all the best of luck on your test tomorrow. And I think that's it. So good night, guys.